And what's up, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. It is Finished Ministries. My name is Ursulon, and it is glad to be back with you. I'm, happy to be here making another video. It's been a while since I have made one. I've got a lot I want to share with you, especially today, talking about Matthew chapter 5, because I believe, and I've often misunderstood Jesus' own words here, and I think many people do. And so I'd like to share some insight with you, and maybe you agree, maybe you don't. Definitely leave your comments and feedback. If you do like this video, definitely give it a thumbs up. And at the end or right now, take a minute to go ahead and like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. So let me share with you what I found in Matthew chapter 5, and we're going to be specifically talking about Jesus' references to him saying in verse 17, "Do not think that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For surely I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, one jot or one tittle will by no means pass from the law till all is fulfilled. Whoever therefore breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches men so shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does and teaches them shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven." And I want to focus in on this verse because I believe many people think that Jesus is referring to the law, the Torah, when he says these commandments. But I want to demonstrate to you that if we go to the end of the Sermon on the Mount, specifically over to Matthew chapter 7, we're going to see something. He closes the Sermon on the Mount saying something, literally bookending these two chapters here, these three chapters. He closes this chapter, but he says, "But everyone who hears these sayings of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand." And so here we say Jesus saying the same thing, two different ways. These commandments of Matthew chapter 5 are these sayings of mine. So what Jesus says in Matthew 5, those commandments are everything he's about to expand upon on this, the Beatitudes of the Sermon on the Mount. And when we actually dig into the details of this, what we're going to find is these three chapters are about the meek inheriting the earth. It is about the transference of the kingdom, the old covenant to the new covenant. And I want to point out a couple things to you. He talks about the passing of heaven and earth, the fulfillment of the law. And I'll make another video on, I've made some videos already on the passing of heaven and earth, but I want to make a couple more because I really found some really good stuff that I want to share with you guys. So when heaven and earth passes away, the jots and the tittles of the law will pass away. And he says, "I didn't come to destroy, I came to fulfill. Therefore, listen to these sayings of mine." And he speaks about those who would understand the old covenant. "You have heard it said, you shall not murder." These are people from the old covenant who would have heard it said, "Whoever shall not murder, and whoever murders will be in danger of the judgment." Well, this is the same thing he said in Matthew 23, that old covenant Israel was guilty of slaying all the prophets from Abel unto Zechariah. And so we see this reference to murder. He also says, "Whoever is angry with his brother without cause shall be in danger of the judgment, danger of hellfire." These are he's speaking to old covenant Israel who is going to be in danger of this. He also talks about bringing your gift to the altar if you remember your brother has something against you. If you compare this chapter to Matthew 23 and 24, man, you're going to find so many parallels. It's mind-boggling. He goes on to say, "You have heard it said, you shall not commit adultery." Well, what was old covenant Israel guilty of? They were guilty of committing adultery. This is all throughout the Old Testament. Whoever looks at a woman to lust after her, we're going to see in the New Testament, this is a common theme. The church was looking at that old covenant woman, admiring her. Many were falling back to the old Mosaic law. He says, pluck out your eye if it causes you to sin. He goes on to say, he talks about divorce. Now, we know that Yahweh issued a divorce decree to Old Covenant Israel. This is in Ezekiel. We also see it again in Matthew chapter 23. Jesus says, "Therefore your house is left unto you desolate." This is him divorcing Israel. So we see all these things here. He talks about swearing oaths. You shall not swear oaths. And interestingly enough, again, Matthew 23, he strongly rebukes the Pharisees for them swearing by the gold that is in the temple, and he rebukes them for saying, that the altar is more important or the temple is more important. He even, so I want to get into this in a future video, but all of this is about Old Covenant versus New Covenant. So these are his sayings. And also, if we jump over to chapter 6, they were the ones, the Pharisees, who did their charitable deeds before men. This is what he rebukes them in Matthew chapter 23. They were the ones who were sounding hypocrite, who were sounding trumpets in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may have glory from men. This is Old Covenant Israel. He says, do your charitable deed, in secret. He goes on to talk about the model prayer, which I really won't get into. But it's about the heaven coming to earth, the new covenant kingdom. He goes on to talk about fasting. Strictly pointing to something that the Pharisees did. They fasted to be seen of men. He talks about the lamp of the body is the eye. They were full of darkness. You cannot serve two masters, for they will hate one and love the other. And then again, we see this. The old covenant system was seen as glorious and riches. And so I believe he's speaking to, you can't serve this old covenant system that has full of riches, which we see again in Luke 16, referring to the rich man. I believe that's a picture of old covenant Israel. He's saying you can't serve that or me. You have to serve one or the other. Okay. Yeah, and then Matthew chapter 7, and I could spend all day in this chapter, but really, this is something that the Pharisees were doing. They were condemning others, and he says, why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye, but do not consider the plank in your own? We see this in Matthew chapter 23. Remove the plank from your eye. He says, do not give what is holy to the dogs. Again, those who would continuously of Old Covenant Israel reject the gospel. He says, he's just telling them, ask, it will be given you. For anyone who asks, receives. If we keep going on, the narrow gate. Jesus is the gate. He is the narrow way. He says, for wide is the gate, broad is the way that leads to destruction. Again, there were so many of that old covenant system who would not find Jesus. They would not be a part of the remnant. This is not speaking to Christians today in a future judgment. This is a contrast between old covenant and new covenant. He says, beware of false prophets coming to you in sheep's clothing. Paul in Acts, in John, said there were many who went out from among us. They would be false prophets in sheep's clothing. This is Old Covenant Israel. He talks about, good trees bearing good fruit. He goes on to say, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven. Again, he's speaking about Old Covenant Israel. He says, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. In Matthew 23, he specifically calls them workers of lawlessness. And then this is the crux. This is the two houses that Jesus is referring to. One that was built on sand, and the other one who is built on him, on the rock. These are the two houses, the Mosaic house and then the spiritual house. And it is these two houses, I will refer to one as heaven and earth, the first heaven and the first earth, the Mosaic covenant house. This was the one that was built on sand, that was going to have the winds blown and beat on it, and great was its fall, which is precisely what we see in Matthew chapter 24. When Jesus says, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. And this is, that house that is built on the rock. His sayings, his words. And it's these commandments that Jesus is referring to in Matthew chapter 5 that he says, whoever listens and does them will be like this wise man who built his house on the rock. He will be great in the kingdom of heaven. He will not be called least in the kingdom of heaven. So that's the contextual, flying high viewpoint of what we're talking about here. I hope you can see the significance of this and how this changes the whole paradigm through which we see Matthew chapter 5. And I hope this has been a blessing for you. Definitely provide your feedback in the comments section. I look forward to sharing more of what I've been studying recently, and I hope it's a blessing. Thanks, and God bless.